Hello. Hello. How are we all doing? Divna, hello. How are you? Roach, Amelia's, welcome in. Box, what's up? Afton, hello. Did you guys notice anything slightly different about uh about the starting soon screen? Dasha, thank you for the follow. Welcome in. We reached a follower goal too. Chaos, what's up? I'm buzzing. Bees, hello. No, box it wasn't. No, wasn't any different. Okay. Hopefully it'll pop up on the specimens. I changed some camera settings on the microscope, and I'm hoping that it's not quite as dark on the specimens anymore. It looked, at least to me, that the starting screen was a little bit brighter. Um, but yes, I think I did fix the white balance. Um, we'll have to. I'll get some feedback from y'all today on it, but I think I did. Um, Before we do anything new, I guess we could just look at one of the specimens that we looked at the other day and just see if definitely brighter. Okay, sick. Feelark, thank you for the resub. So this is one of the ones we had taken a look at on Monday. The scratches are more noticeable. Yeah, that's fair. If we go up, is it up? Nope, it's down. There it is. That's like a lot better, right? You can see a lot more of this detail. Much better. Okay, very sick. All right. Yes. Really good. Excellent. Good to know. Okay. Well, that's one thing taken care of. We also have a second small, exciting to me, but I don't know how exciting to you, second thing, um, order of business. Roach. Yes, absolutely. If you want to make emotes, that's go for it. Um, I did I did talk to somebody today about sub badges and maybe a couple of other emotes. Tech Rhino, thanks for the follow. Welcome in. Um, so I know y'all asked about that last time. So again, in the works. We've got a couple things to figure out. But um, since this is pre-chat chats, we always do just go through the Beetle collection. Jules, thanks for the follow. Welcome in. Um, we go through all the Beetle stuff first, since we do this right before the actual chat chats. However, make myself bigger. I got something in the mail. And this is something that we have talked about a bit on stream. This is not a P.O. box thing. By any means, nobody sent me this. I did some birthday shopping. So this is not viewer mail or anything like that, but we did talk about something along these lines on stream a few weeks ago, and I haven't opened it yet. I made sure there was no more identification stuff in here. I crossed out my name on the front, but I'm only showing you guys the back, so that's no self docs. But I haven't actually opened it yet, so I haven't taken this thing out of the package. Let's do that now, shall we? Ooh, bubble wrap. What could it be? What could it be? Well, it'll be a little bit easier on the back, I think. Ooh. Oh, we're getting crazy glare from the new light. There it is. There it is. I bought my first slab. So, again, maybe for some of you who weren't here when we were having this discussion, somebody asked if my favorite Pokemon was Pinsir or Heracross, and I was able to simply reach over and grab these two little dudes off my desk. I have been very into Pokemon since I was a child. But as a kid, my favorite Pokemon was Golem, which is that big rock turtle from Gen 1. Then, as of last November, which, not great for myself financially, but I got back into collecting physical cards. And thankfully, I decided obviously I was going to stick to the bug theme. Like that's like my only personality trait. So, I was like, well, I'm going to collect the bug Pokemon. And really what that means is there are these people out there spending like hundreds of dollars on a Charizard while I can get the cards that I want for like $1. No, and my goal was not only the bug Pokemon, but it was all of the different arts of all of the different bug types. So every set from base set to the newest ones, all of the different arts from all of the different sets. So there are some arts that get reused. Like the original Caterpie drawing from base set, that's actually in 4 different sets, but it has different set numbers on the bottom. And so my goal was to collect all of them. And I immediately went overboard and made a spreadsheet about this. That all of the tabs were like all of the different Pokemon, and then there was lists, and I could check whether or not I had it, and like how much it goes for, etc., etc. But it's been really fun, basically doing IRL bug hunt in the Pokemon stores. Going through, sifting through bulk cards and finding a random Caterpie that you pay like 25 cents for, and being just as excited about that as some people getting like a crazy Charizard or whatever. Div, hello. We're doing nerd shit. Vaguely related nerd shit at the moment. So anyway, I got into getting cards and whatnot. And I've done pretty well. I try not to order them because that's like way less fun than finding them. Alexis, no, not yet. We're getting there. You missed me taking it out of the envelope, but I haven't done the reveal yet. So I try not to order them, but it was my birthday recently. I love this card. I have it raw, but I decided that I was going to order my first slabbed card or graded card. So, for those of you that maybe are not deep in this end of it, you can get cards graded depending on their quality, and the price usually goes up a lot if it's in, this is a PSA card, if it is in a PSA 10. That is the best, like, the card is perfect, the centering, the corners, everything is really, really nice on it. Well, there's not too many bug cards that get that expensive. This is definitely now the most expensive card that I have in my collection. Um, because if I was gonna buy it, I was gonna get it in a 10, right? So this is very cool. Like I said, I just took it out of the package on stream. Ta-da! Oh, we're losing it. I'm right in the light. It's blinding. We can't see anything. There we go. Maybe. The full art pincer. let me adjust this a little bit. Maybe so it's not quite as bright. Yes, the full art pincer hollow in. It's not gonna be terrible on my thing there. Let's see if we can do it this way. I was there for a second. You're gonna have to trust me. This is a PSA 10. So, very exciting. Like I said, this is my first graded card that I have in my collection. Really sick art. I have loved this thing since it came out. I got it when it came out. It was a new set that released, and people will go crazy for the new sets when they come out. And for whatever reason, when this card first came out, it was only like $6. So I actually have a couple of copies of it that are ungraded, that are just like the card in a little sleeve. But now I have basically the best quality one that you can get in that art that I really, really liked. So that was today's mail segment. The perfect pincer, exactly. So, I know we had talked about Pokemon. Roach asked that question a couple weeks ago, and we had a little bit of a chat about it, and I just got fun mail in today. So, we were able to talk about that, but now we are going to move into our regularly scheduled programming of learning beetle identification. So not too big of a jump. Pincer's a beetle and all that. So watch the flashbang warning. I'm gonna turn the light back on. There it is. Okay. So today, yes, real life buggies now. Pincer is a stag beetle. And I guess we can start with that. So we've been moving through all of the different beetles, and we are finally at the point where we can talk about the scarab beetles and their relatives. Scarab beetles are a really big group. There are a lot of things that you're probably familiar with in that group, like dung beetles, but also the green and the brown June beetles, all your rhinoceros beetles and Hercules beetles, and all that are scarabs proper. But then you have things that are related to scarabs, that are in the superfamily Scarabeoidea. So it's just Scarabeoidea is the scarab beetles and their direct relatives. Now, I'm going to put a bit of an unconventional stag beetle here first, and we can talk about it a little bit, and then we will move to the kind of stag beetles that everybody is excited to see. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 11 families within Scarabeoidea, and I am missing 2. So we've only got 9 to look at. Wait, can I count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, we've got 9 to look at. They're not missing. I never had them. I haven't traded with anybody for them, and I've never collected them myself, so they're not in this collection yet. But we will start with this little oak stag beetle. Roach, you can't eat the beetles. We keep telling you. It does look a little blown out now. Let me turn down the light and see how that does. Okay, so we're still troubleshooting the light business apparently. But the big thing about stag beetles is that the males will tend to have these really large mandibles. That was move it down. Exactly, Roach. So male stag beetles will have these big mandibles for male competition. They will use them to fight other males for access to breeding resources, to actually, breeding with the females, to access to food resources. So all of their little disputes get settled with going through and using their large mandibles to fight for them. Now, this is an oak stag beetle, and it is maybe half an inch, which is like 1.5 centimeter and a half, roughly. Um, and so this is pretty small for a stag beetle, but a stag beetle nonetheless. Fighting for mates outside is not that big of a thing in insects outside of stag beetles and scarab beetles. Other bugs actually fight to mate. There are a couple of examples. So, like leaf-footed bugs, Coreidae, Coreidae. They've got those really big, muscular hind legs that they're able to fight males with for access to females. Let's see. What other groups actually like fight about it? Most often you do see it within scarabs and within beetles. Scarab beetles are, typically the ones that you think of that have roach. That's why I spelled it. I realized it sounded like that after I said it. Yeah, there are a couple groups, but beetles have really again monopolized kind of that space of developing really cool weaponry to fight with each other. There it is. So yeah, you do see it a lot in scarab beetles, and in the rhinoceros beetle subfamily. So in the dynastines, those are going to be the ones that have the really big horns. So your Hercules beetles, your ox beetles, your atlas beetles, all of those things that have the really, really big horns are mostly going to be in that subfamily. And those are actually horns on either the head or on the thorax that they use to fight with. Stag beetles, on the other hand, as you know, this is a fairly small male. Give him some grace. He is perfectly average sized. Um, these ones have enlarged mandibles to fight. So rather than having horns coming off of the head or off of the thorax that kind of help them that way, these ones will have large mandibles to fight. And that's the difference between the two different kinds of beetle fights. You have some where there are mandibles like this where they will try and grab each other and then basically lift them off of the log that they're fighting on and then toss it. Whereas Hercules beetles and a lot of these other beetles that have like leveraging horns, rather than biting them and picking them up, they actually just try to use physics to like pry them off of the tree. It is pretty entertaining to watch. However, there is an animal welfare concern with it. People in other countries and even people in the US will oftentimes buy these beetles and then fight them, which compared to like other forms of animal sports is generally not that dangerous for the actual beetle. They get tired, they get flung off, but they don't bleed and die generally. But people do it in captivity, like as a betting sport, and I am no good with that. Really unfortunate, putting animals unnaturally against one another, because sometimes they will put species together that don't coexist in nature, so they would never meet. But in the wild, super fun to see. It's always fun to see in the wild. You're like, what is it about this little patch of this tree that like this is where we make our claim. This is where we fight. So this is like a little stag beetle. And another thing for scarabs is that they also have a 555 tarsal formula. So as far as I know, except for dung beetles, well, except for some dung beetles, scarabioids all have a 555 tarsal formula, which means that the front, middle, and hind legs all have 5 like foot segments. So here, this is 5, the long one here that attaches to the claw. That's 5, that's 4, that's 3, that's 2, and that's 1. The other thing about stag beetles in particular is that all scarabioids, so everything that we're going to look at today, has lamellate antennae, which I know we've talked about on regular chat chats before, but those are the big fan-shaped antennae that can kind of open and close to let more or less surface area to pick up smells or whatever. The technical definition for them is that they are unevenly enlarged. So sometimes in other groups where you have a swelling or an enlargement of an antennal segment, it's symmetrical. But in scarabioids, they have an asymmetrical enlargement of the club, which means that this side stays basically the same, but then everything on this side of it kind of gets big. So that's a character for all of Scarabioidea. But stag beetles, lucanids, so what we're looking at right now, actually can't close, or can't open and close their antennal segments. So if we look there, man, it's still pretty bright. I won't turn it down too much, but there we go. Nice and in focus. So do you see those last three large antennal segments? So like here, 1, 2, and 3. Oh, Roach, you're gonna lose your shit today. Then we've got a lot of really good stuff coming up if you're into the antenna like this. Um, so stag beetles, they have that asymmetrical club. Again, the you're looking at it, so the right edge is still the same, but then the left side, as you can see, has been enlarged and they go out the other direction. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about lamellate antennae and how they're asymmetrically the club at the end is asymmetrical. So you can see that pretty nicely on this guy. We looked at the 5-segmented tarsi. Now, let's swap it over. I have to put my labels back on here real quick. Just give me 1 second. Crazy eyebrows. Well, before we get into crazy eyebrows, let's get into more crazy mandibles instead. We're going to have to zoom out for this one. Frankly, don't know if this is going to fit. No, we should be good. Okay, a little bit low. Bring that further up. Roach, I'm telling you, scarabs are where it's at. So this is a more typical male stag beetle. So you can see the similarities now between this guy and this guy, the pincer that I've got holding up right now. So these two big horns on the pincer are supposed to be representative of the mandibles. Obviously, he's got a mouth in the middle that's not quite, anatomically accurate, but it is based on a stag beetle like this. And this is, any beetles have spikes on their mandibles. Can you rephrase that, Roach? Because this one does have, these are called retinacular teeth. These little points here inside of the mandible. So they're like doubly toothed. Oh, like pincer does. I think there are. Do I have a prostomid? Give 1 second. Let me see where these are from. These are jugular horn beetles, so that's not horn. It's not mandibles. Glacial, what's up? And Rebel, hello. I don't. I can't think of any offhand, Roach. That doesn't mean that there aren't any. Because again, beetles do crazy shit. But I will think about that and get back to you. But as far as I can think of, there aren't like spiky bits on the mandibles themselves. So if we flip this over now, well, I guess let me show you just the rest of the body first. I'm going to have him go left across the screen just so you can see the rest of him. Not too much exciting going on back here. The mandibles are obviously the main excitement for this guy. But this one is Lucanus capreolus, which is the reddish brown stag beetle. Spawns! Hello, how are you? Welcome to the bug stream. So if we flip it over, one of the first things we can look at is the actual, or one of the helpful identifying characters for this species in particular. Oh, we're doing great here, Spawns. Living the dream, chatting about bugs. So there are what? Well, Mazma, Capreolus. I think there are 4 or 5 species in this genus in the US. And so one of the ways that you can tell that it's actually this one is that the femur, so remember, coxa, trochanter, femur, tibia, tarsus. The femur on this one is this like lighter color than the tibia and the tarsus. Ooh, there we go. That's good lighting. We just nailed that lighting. But yeah, shrimp. The tarsi are pretty wicked. So on this guy, coxa, trochanter, femur. This again, the orange one, tibia here, and then tarsus here. They also have J7. Hello, gang's all here tonight. If we flip this just a tad, you'll actually be able to see the Aurolium, which is, so we're real zoomed in on the tarsus now. Turn this back up a bit. Maybe pop it over, zoom out. Yeah. Knee-length stockings. But yeah, so he has this extra little the tarsal claws, and he has this extra little pad here in the middle that has additional hairs on it that help him hold on and have traction when climbing on climbing up trees and things like that. There are different groups that will have different types of Auroliums. There's also a thing on a fly which is called the M podium, which are fairly similar structures, but not exactly the same. So you can see it there on the hind leg. Here's the middle foot, basically exactly the same. Good detail shot, though. Yeah, look at that. So I'm going to flip it back over again. Straight onto its back this time. We're done looking at feet like weirdos. And we can take a look at some of the underside bits. Hey, Mom. You're just in time. Okay, and focus. Tortilla, that's a good question. I don't know. Mom, crazy question. Do you know what wiki feet is? I'm about to learn a I'm about to learn a lot. We'll see if she does. I don't know if she does. But yes, so now we are back on the underside of uh the underside of the stag beetle head. And another thing that I forgot to mention about scarabioids is they not only have lamellate antennae, they also have geniculate antennae. Uh, Geniculate, like ant antennae, are like the elbowed ones. So it's kind of hard to see on this guy. But here is the actual first antennal segment, this long piece. And then it abruptly elbows over here to this other side that um has the lashes on it over here on this side. So yeah, Roach, I saw that. We're getting there. We're getting there. So underneath here, we're able to see some of those other mouth parts. And obviously, no, you're good. You're good. I appreciate it. Um, so obviously, in this guy, the mandibles are like maxed out, right? Well, not quite. The mandibles are real big, not quite maxed, but they're rather large. They take up a lot of space in the mouth area. And so he's basically put all the skill points into mandibles. And because of that, some of these other bits and bobs under the head get reduced. So over here on the sides, you guys are familiar with these. These are the maxillary palps. These ones here, again, a lot smaller than other groups that we've seen before. And then here in the middle, his little tuft of hair, but also this little piece here and here, those are the labial palps. So they're extra fuzzy. These beetles will basically feed on sweet things as adults. So whether that be tree sap, whether that be fruit or like flows of sap on trees, um, so they'll use this to basically be able to soak up any little tiny bits of juice. So if it is just like a very small bit of tree sap coming out, they have all of this extra hair to kind of help wick it up into their mouth. Lily, hello. Roach, you really gotta reel it in. Reel it in. But yeah, if we can we can go all the way down. And there you go. So right at the base, you can actually see these are the palps here. And then it has this nice brush that is still, like you can see, pretty soft, seedy here in the middle. And here's that antenna again for your viewing pleasure. And again, you can see how these segments are pretty stabilized, pretty far apart, so they're not able to fully close that antennal club. So a little bit different there. I don't think there's anything else that exciting underneath. But again, yeah. So these tibia. No, sorry. The femur being a different color than the tibia and the tarsus is a good identifying mark for this species, at least, in the U.S. among U.S. stag beetles. Now, I do have other ones. Ah, shit, they're under a bunch of stuff. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do that next week. I can prepare. Um, because again, this collection that we're working out of right now is just my synoptic reference collection. So it has representatives of these things in it, but it doesn't have like all of the individuals of that group that I have in my collection. And I have some pretty sick stag beetles, if I do say so myself. Um, so we could take a look at some of the differences there between those at some point. But not today. We're going to continue pushing on with our Scarabioid identifications. Yes. So there's that. We'll put them back in their little box. And we will go to a different family. Amanda! Hello. We're looking at fluffy beetles today, Amanda. And speaking of fluffy, I don't know her. So this is a particularly cool one. Obviously, very fuzzy. Very, very fuzzy. The CD on this one go absolutely crazy. If we flip it over, you can see that there's a full coat of hair under there. Whip Art, thanks for the follow. So all of the underside bits are nice and fuzzy. It does have a little bit of a horn going on. So again, the Scarabioids do tend to have ornamentation or some sort of thing going on. But what you'll also notice here is obviously the antenna. So we'll get the we're out of focus there. So let's go back in. Renshaw, hello. Oh, Bleep Art, yes. Yes. Lots of creepy crawly fans on Twitter. Well, I don't know about lots, but if there are, they're in this chat. Welcome in. Yeah, my name is Evan. I'm an entomologist. I live in Florida and I work at a fairly large museum. And I just started Twitch streaming a couple weeks ago, and we are going through beetle families. In about 2 hours, I'm going to be doing chat chats over on Alveus Sanctuary. I'm not in trouble. She didn't use my full government name, which she definitely shouldn't do because this is the internet. Please do not say my full name in chat, mother. But yeah, so I started over on the Sanctuary. We started here. just a few weeks ago, and we are just looking at bugs. So this is a pleocomid or a rain beetle. Tortilla, get ready to delete the message if she does. Um, and this is a male, so it has these nice little horns, kind of just scoop shaped here up at the front. But then, what you shall notice is the antennal club. Oh, J7, yeah, I was there. I watched it happen. So, this is a what I would call proper lamellate antenna. You can see that all of those segments are fairly closed together. That happens when they, die and turn into specimens, but they have the ability to open up all of those segments to really increase the surface area. Um, Thank you, Tortilla. I was going to ask. Um, to really increase that surface area for picking up the pheromones that are let off by the females. Now, this is the family Pleocomidae, which are also known as rain beetles, like precipitation kind of rain. And I've never collected these myself. Um, this one was traded to me by a friend. Um, but apparently, you have to go get them while it is actively raining. They are out in the Pacific Northwest, and while it is actively raining, you go out and these guys are flying around. Now, when they are flying around, the reason why you only get males when they're flying is because the females don't really leave the ground at any point. Their larvae are subterranean, the females stay underground, and when it rains, the females will come and just stick the very tip of their abdomen out of the dirt. She starts releasing her mating pheromones, letting all the males know that she is ready and available. And when it's raining, the rain comes down, hits the beetles, and it will aerosolize and help that female pheromone spread because the rain is helping to kind of puff it up out into the air. So the females stay underground, the males fly when it rains, and they use these really crazy antennae to basically sniff out where the females are. Now, because of that, finding females, like as an entomologist, finding females, let me rephrase that. As an entomologist, locating female specimens of the family Pleocomidae can be quite difficult because they don't ever come out of the ground. So what is the obvious solution here? Does anybody have a guess as to how entomologists have figured out how to track down these female rain beetles? Follow the fellas. That's an interesting option. I think that probably could work. If you find a male, you tie a little thread or something onto him and follow him around. That might be an idea, but that would require, uh, either running to keep up with a female, or running to keep up with the male while he is actively flying away from you in the rain, or him after being captured and somehow marked to be followed, not freaking out and still trying to go find a female. Okay, Tortilla, thank you. Hair's glow in the dark. I don't think so. Rake. I don't know. Worm flute. All interesting ideas. Hose. Interesting. Interesting, but no. They train dogs. Magnet is very funny. Um, but no. So just like you can train dogs at the airport to sniff out drugs or bombs or gun residue, or how you train pigs in some cases to track down truffles, you can train dogs to highlight uh, roach that got held for horn dog, in case you're curious. Um, you can train the dogs to hone in on the chemicals of these female beetles and release the dogs. Basically, they will run over, they will find the female, and then you can dig them up. It'll get you to like the little hole in the ground where she is broadcasting from. And then you're able to collect females, which is very helpful because at that point, you can then have a female and you can put her in a nice little mesh cage or something like that and wait for the males to show up. And what that does, and we've talked about this before, is if you don't have a male, oftentimes it is very hard to identify what species something is because there is uh, historical levels of sexism, even in entomology, of people not describing female specimens because they didn't use the same. They didn't want to deal with like dissecting the female reproductive tract and diagramming all of that. So typically, a lot of species descriptions are just based on males. Um, and so if you have a female and her pheromone is specific at calling in a certain species male, you can put her in a little cage, like a pop up butterfly cage, and basically let her do her thing. But then all the males of that species will fly in to try and mate with her. So it's actually a really clever way of getting that species association because we can't tell the difference, right? Like we can't a lot of the time between the females tell if this is species A or species B. But if you put them out after you have tracked them down with dogs, or if you get lucky and just like happen to find one, you can match the females up with the males of that same species because her pheromones were specifically calling in that other guy to mate. Um, so that's pretty cool. And like I said, I have never personally collected these, but I do have hopes. Um, the National Entomology meeting is in Portland, Oregon in like a month from now. And I think pleocomids are still flying. Yes. So I have a shot. I have a shot at collecting these in like a month from now, which is very, very exciting. Um, it's nice to, have the specimen and it's really good to like have this reference material, but there is something special about like finding that thing for yourself. And so this would be another fun group. This is my only individual of this family. So anything that I find up in Oregon this time um, would be new for me, which would be really really cool. So not only are they neat because of how you can track down the females, the males have these really really incredible antennae. And one of the ways to separate them from the other scarab groups is that they will have 11 antennal segments, and 4 to 7 of them will have that like big outward projection. So on this guy, we are looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess I would maybe call that 6. 6 of them that have that large, I don't know, I guess leaf on them to pick up those chemical signals. So that's pleocomids. The other scarab family that has 11 antennal segments is this next one that we are going to take a look at. And this is the family Geotrupidae, which are the earth-boring scarab beetles or earth-boring dung beetles. These will go to dung, but they are not true dung beetles. And this is part of why I wanted to have, not this one specifically, but this is partially why this reference collection is quite helpful. Because this is one of the groups where I think there are pretty significant differences between the subfamilies. You're so right. So the first thing that we're going to just take a look at is this little grouping of individuals that I have here to take a look at today. So these are all the same family, even though they're vastly different in size and I would say pretty different in physical appearance. So you have this one over here on the left that sort of looks like a basketball. That is Bulbocerasoma. In the middle, you have Eucanthus. And then on the right, you have Geotrupes. And this group, like I said, is the other scarab family that Scarabioid family that has 11 antennal segments. But if we zoom in here, hopefully this is going to be a good enough antenna in view. Turn that up again just a little bit. At the very end, the club out of focus. Bring it in just a little bit more. This one only has 3 antennal club segments at the tip. So in the identification key, you know where you make the choices of does it have this or does it have that? Pleocomids, the ones we were just looking at, and this one, the Geotrupids, are right next to each other. So if you get to that pairing, in the key, you should have one of these 2 groups. And one of the characters that you use to separate them is how many segments have this like extra flange on them. In Geotrupids, it will only ever be 3. In Pleocomids, in addition to them being very hairy, they will have 4 to 7 that have that big extension on them. So these 2 are, in the identification guide, pretty close to one another, but they look relatively different. You know, they share some characters, but they're vastly different in their appearances. Yeah, so they're vastly different in their otherwise their appearances. Um, there is something here with this guy. As I said at the beginning, these are most of the time called earth boring dung beetles, or earth boring scarab beetles, meaning they dig quite deeply. But you will find them also in similar habitats to like your regular dung beetle. And one of the ways that you could separate these two, or separate those two groups, well, one, your dung beetle will only have 10 antennal segments, but also the scutellum. So this is a physical characteristic that we had to have looked at this before. I don't remember exactly when, but we've definitely looked at a scutellum before. It's this little triangle piece that's here between where the wings start or the elytra start. So on this one, it's pretty broad, but it's this triangle piece here. And then you can still see it over on this guy, on this side, the bulbocerasoma, this broad triangular piece here. That one's a little bit out of focus when I did that, but the only real thing that you should be confusing geotruphids for are the scarabeines, or your typical dung beetles. However, your typical dung beetles will only have 10 antennal segments, and the scutellum will not be visible. So on your scarab beetles, the ones that are on dung, squirrel, thanks for the follow. Welcome in. The ones that are on dung, they won't have this little triangle piece visible. So that's one way that you can tell them apart. But now let's take a little bit of a closer look at these individuals here. Pretty good, I think. Just a tad more. Get that guy in focus. There we go. So this is bulbocerasoma. Bleepart, yes. Just last stream, we were looking at some of the live beetles that I have. I also have a lot of tarantulas downstairs. I just moved recently, and a lot of these folks know me from some of the other videos and stuff that I've done with Alveus. But I moved 62 tanks across country, so most of it was spiders. But yes, I do have quite a collection of live things as well. They're a little bit more finicky to get on stream. A lot of things that I have wouldn't appreciate the big bright lights on them. So that's why we're mostly sticking to the preserved specimens right now. But every now and again, we will have some live stuff on here. And I'm working on trying to figure out other ways to have the live specimens on the stream. Like I said, I think I said it right when you came in. I have only been doing this for a little over a month at this point. So, still trying to figure out the ins and outs of everything. Face and focus. Let's go. Zoom in a little bit more.
too close. Can't really see much. Back out a little bit.
World Bird Sanctuary. Hello. Welcome in. Sam, you too. Hello, hello. Oh, Sam, you know it's beetle time.
You know it's beetle time.
Well, that's great. I love birds too. I started birding back in 2021, and it really. Mom, thanks for the bits. Thank you, thank you. And Icebound, yes, hello. Yeah, so World Bird Sanctuary. I started birding back in 2021, and it like really took over. Uh, I got into it because we were on an entomology trip, and it was cold and raining, and there were no bugs. And the bird people I was with were like, "Oh, blah blah, that was a blah blah blah," and they were still finding a lot of cool stuff even though it was raining. So after that, I was like, I am going to learn birds as well. So I got binoculars and I got a field guide and everything. And I started birding earnestly in 2021. It's been really, really fun. Seeing the lens or seeing places through this other biological lens. But they give me money, Mom. you're paying me money when you do bits. So thank you for that. Um, but yeah, it was really fun. I got into it and I joined my local Audubon chapter. They let me give a talk about like approaching birding from an entomology perspective. I got really into it and I started leading walks for them. I just moved and I joined my new Audubon chapter already. So very exciting. Florida has a lot of cool bugs or a lot of cool birds and cool bugs, and that's where I'm at right now. So I'm very excited to experience this down here a little bit more. Um, but yeah, birds are sick too. Glad you guys are here. If you have any bug questions, hit me up. But anyway, going back to our little Bulbocerosoma guy here, you can see that it does have all good. Hello, Kelsey. Welcome in. Let's see if I can get it in focus here. I've explained it before, but what I can see through the microscope is not in focus, or if it's in focus for me in the scope, it's not in focus on stream for you guys. So I'm always trying to play with this field of view of like I can see it versus you guys can see it. So right now for me through the scope, this guy is blurry, but you guys can see it pretty well, which is all I care about really. But you can see here that it also has this nice little horn which it will use in some instances to fight males, to fight other males off. But as their name suggests, these are digging beetles. And the way that they dig, part of it comes from using that head like a little bit of a shovel. But they also have these really beefy front legs. These are what we would call fossorial forelimbs. Um, Fossorial means like adapted for digging. And the way that I always remember that is like, oh, you dig for fossils. So there are a lot of groups that you'll notice, things like mole crickets, dung beetles will have this. This guy has this. Anything that digs will typically have these really big, scooped, toothed front legs that they're able to basically just go like this and dig their tunnels out. So that's why it has this really thickened front leg with those teeth on it. They use it to dig tunnels. And again, their name makes sense. This is an earth boring dung beetle. They use that to dig down under the ground. But you will notice that they do still have the other pieces as well. It's a little bit hairy underneath, but not nearly as much as the Pleocomid was. But over here, we're now looking at the underside of that front leg. There are still... Ooh, not in focus there. Hopefully. There we go. So again, as I said before, Scarabioids, everything in this group is going to generally have a 5-5-5 tarsal formula, which means that all of these, the feet, like the very end of the legs, will have 5 segments on the front, middle, and hind legs. In some groups, you will have 5-5-4, where the last leg will have 1 fewer segment than the other 2. But in Scarabioids, except for sometimes, there are always exceptions. That is one of the big things about entomology. Oop. Went out there for a second. The the front tarsi in dung beetles sometimes have evolved away. And the reason for that, especially in the dung beetles that roll, so we've talked about dung beetle guilds before. There are the really small ones that will live inside of the dung pat. You will have the tunnelers, which will basically take the dung and dig straight down. And then you have the most famous of the dung beetle types, the ones that will grab the ball and roll it away. And if you are constantly pushing dung with your back legs, that means that your front legs are going to be unequally taking the burden of basically propelling you around. And so, if you're doing that, your tarsi have a higher chance of getting damaged. So, what happens in some of these dung beetle groups is that they will actually have a 0-5-5 tarsal formula. Their tarsi on the front legs will basically be non-existent, and it's not because they broke off, it's because they have evolutionarily lost them in that process because they don't use them that much. It's a lot easier for them to just walk on these really thickened front tibia than it is to actually be fully up on the foot. But again, in the groups that do have it, that do have a front tarsus, there are 5 segments. And you can see that here. The tarsal claw is always on the last segment. So this is 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And that's on the front leg. We can see it again here on the middle leg. And this one, the middle leg here appears to be missing those tarsal claws. And I think that is just an error with my specimen. I think that tarsus has broken off. So here again, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh, a little bit of fuzzies back here. I should clean these off. Let me grab a pair of forceps to get rid of this. Unsightly. And then here is a hind leg. And this one is also another very clear. Nope, did not do it. There we go. Okay. A very clear 1, 2,
3, 4, and 5.
Broken post modem, or do they break off before that sometimes? It could be either. Um, when insects dry like this, they do tend to get quite brittle. So I would imagine that it happened post mortem. If I was putting a label on or taking a label off or trying to flip it over or something and that little bit got stuck, it would be very easy to break it off. I don't have. Do I have any? No, I don't have anything really available right now that I could sacrifice for the demonstration. Um, but we don't put anything on these insects to preserve them. It is just their exoskeleton. So if you've ever like handled a crab or a crayfish, it's that same chitinous exoskeleton, that same material. But when it's dry, there's no process like keeping it together. And I'm sure, as much as we all do not want to talk about that on this stream, I'm sure we've all squashed a bug before, right? Um, and it's pretty easy. It's even easier after they've dried out. So, oh, okay, you've pinned insects before. Very cool. But yeah, so I would guess that probably happened after it died, but I have collected things that have been missing antennae or missing legs or pieces of legs before from the wild. So it does happen. It definitely does happen. Um, but by default, I would just assume more often that it would probably be my fault rather than something that it came with, especially from that specimen, because I collected that in 2016. So that was a 10-year-old beetle, almost nine going on 10. Um, and I was just starting in entomology at that point, and so I was a lot less careful with specimens. I didn't know as well how to handle them. I didn't have quite as good spatial awareness of like being able to turn things over and flip them around without breaking things. So that being an older specimen, I would almost guarantee that it was my fault. This next one, this one is 2018, so slightly newer. But this is Eucanthus. This is another, still the same family. This is still a Geotrupid. And we will take a face look at this guy. This one's cute. Old buggy. Yeah, it's one of the oldest that I personally would have picked up. Um, I've brought them out on some of the other streams, but right before I moved, I had a colleague give me a pair of ground beetles from Japan that were collected in 1944. So I think those are probably the oldest specimens that I have now, and really interesting that they were collected like in the middle of World War II. Somebody was thankfully able to still kind of go about their normal routine of collecting insects despite everything else that was going on at that point in time. And I think that's just in general a really cool thing about the history that's stored in collections is you get that historical perspective and you have that connection to like, I know who picked up this bug 80 years ago. Or the fun fact that always comes up, the oldest specimen that we have that we know about that is in a collection still was a butterfly that was pinned in 1704. So that specimen has like 315, 320 years of history behind it. That butterfly has been in a museum longer than the US has been a country. And it's always crazy to think about that. And that's also part of the justification and like one of my big explanations as to why collections um in general are really important because uh as an entomologist, I like bugs more than most people do. A lot more than most people do. And I get the question a lot of like, well, you love bugs so much, but you kill so many of them. And it's like, yes, in some ways that I do, but this specimen is going to outlive me by several hundred years if well taken care of. And that is the justification, at least that I have, of like, oh, you find a bug in your house, it's probably going to end up squished under your shoe. I find a bug in my house, it's going to go into a museum, and that specimen could be useful to someone in like 150 years from now. So that's part of the cool thing, again, that I always feel with collections is that really interconnectedness with history. And having this specimen data is a snapshot of like what you can find in a certain area in a certain time. Those things that were collected, 50 years ago at maybe a nature preserve, and you go back to that exact spot now, there's like a decent chance that it's a Walmart parking lot now. And so what you were able to find there 50, 100, 150 years ago is going to be different than what's there in 2025. And that's one of the other reasons why we keep adding to collections. The way that we're able to look back at stuff from the early 1900s or even throughout the 1800s, people are going to want those same records looking back at 2025. So having people still adding to and actively collecting things, even though we have, hundreds of the same species in a collection, those all represent unique individuals, unique collecting localities, unique collecting times. And yeah, there's just so much you can do with the museum specimens. It really is like running a library, but for bugs. Somebody might not check this book out for 20 years, but then it might be the perfect thing that somebody's looking for at some point in the future, and that's worth preserving and worth keeping around. Stork, no. Um, you put a pin through it, and then you let it dry, and that's about it. At least with beetles. Beetles are hard exoskeletons. Their exoskeleton is made out of the same stuff that crabs and lobsters are made of, so it's called chitin. Um, and once it dries, it stays in that position. So when I did this one way back in the day, again, this is a 2018 specimen. I left these legs untucked. I would never do this now. I'm kind of annoyed by it now, to be honest. But you can see that these legs are just kind of out. I would prefer them to be tucked in closer to the body because not only does that save space, and space is a premium in an entomology collection, but also it helps protect the specimen more. Because these legs are just kind of out in space, there's a bigger chance that I accidentally knock one of these legs off, or I accidentally catch these tarsi on a label or something like that. So, this, like I said, an older specimen that not my finest work, but still super valuable because no one will ever be able to go back to this exact spot and collect this individual again. Until we figure out time travel, I will always pick stuff up because no one will ever be able to get back to where I currently am. So even though I've got a lot of backlog and a lot of bugs downstairs in the freezer, um, I will still go always get more because that information is super valuable. But yeah, for all insects, really, if you put them on a pin and they dry, they just kind of hang out for a very, very long time. They can degrade. There are pests that can get in and will eat collections. They degrade with sunlight. They degrade with, UV light. Temperature, humidity are really temperature fluctuations. Humidity is really bad for them. So, uh, if they're preserved properly, they can last a very, very long time. But it doesn't take much to accidentally screw them up. Kelsey, that's a good question. It depends on the season, and it depends how busy I am. Otherwise, uh, I always, like 100% of the time, have a vial on me because you never know when you're going to come across something cool. I have fallen victim to this several times of not having a container. Uh, in which case, I have done the following: one, taken my glasses case out of my backpack and put a bug in there. I have grabbed a Gatorade out of a nearby trash can, dumped it out, and then put the bug in the Gatorade bottle. I have just straight up barehanded a beetle until I got home, and that took like half an hour. I have a little pill thing on my keychain that I keep my lactate in if I want like ice cream when I'm out and I don't want to be dying from my lactose intolerance. But it's this little screwed together container that I have dumped my pills out in my pocket and put the beetle in the little container. So I am prepared all the time if the moment strikes. But actively going out to collect, it does depend on the season a lot. I just went out this past Saturday. We have a research property pretty nearby that we're doing an inventory of. So basically, just trying to catalog all of the different insects that we can find on this property. And so, a couple of folks from my work, we went out and basically grabbed all of the different things to see what's there. Um, and I printed out 200 labels, and I didn't use all of them, so I think I probably collected like 150, 170 specimens that night. And I was able to process that all in a day. So if I had property closer, I would probably go out more often. And I've been thinking about starting a backyard survey about just running lights out my back porch, even though I don't really have much habitat back there. But when I was in Arizona just a few months ago, I was there for, well, before I moved, I went back to teach some beetle classes, and we ran lights every night for 3 weeks straight. And at no point, even with a bunch of us collecting there, did we ever see decreases in local populations. Um, that's another thing that people bring up a lot of time. They're like, oh, like I've never seen that bug before. It must be super rare. It's like, well, no, you've just probably never been out looking for them. We're in the scarabs, so we're talking about similar groups, but the Western Hercules beetle is the largest beetle in the U.S. They can get 2.5, 3 inches long. The males have really nice big horns, and they come out at the end of monsoon season in Arizona, which tends to be like late July through mid September. Everybody goes to try to find them. It's a very sought after beetle. You know, it's big, it's flashy. They make pretty good pets for the couple of months that they live. So people go out and try to find them a lot. There are spots that people know of to go get them. But if you have your own light setup, like I, go to run lights purposely for this, you can go wherever. And if you're in good habitat, you can find a lot of them. I found a spot a few years ago that these Hercules beetles feed on ash trees, Arizona ash. And if you can find ash trees, you can find the beetles. I had a spot where I could go up to the trees, not very tall ones, but I could go grab them. And I could basically pick the beetles off the tree like fruit. Um, Remarkable. People don't have that experience, but I've also wanted to see like running lights there. What that would be like if I can find them during the day without really having to try. What's going to happen if I bring my big bright light into the scenario? And so 3 years ago now, I ran my lights this in this area where I knew the Hercules beetles would be, and I'll post this in the Discord. I don't know if you're in there, but for folks who want to see, if you join that, I'll post a picture here when we're done with stream. I found 107 Hercules beetles at this one site in about 3 hours. Now, we did not take 107. I want to be very clear about that. We kept like 2 to 4 each, and dumped like 85 or 90 of them back. But if you find the right habitat and you go there at the right time and you hit conditions just right, you can find a ton of these things. And there are stories from, this generation of collectors before me who, as they call it, like unrared things. Meaning that, like, oh, we only knew this species from a couple of specimens. Oh, we're at an ad break. I'll hold. I'll restart those last couple sentences. Okay, and we're back. Let me rewind those last couple sentences for those of you that missed it. The generation before me, they talk a lot about when they unrared specimens or unrared a species, meaning that like it was only known from a handful of things, a handful of specimens, maybe like 5 total. But then somebody goes out and hits it just right at the right time of year in the right habitat, and all of a sudden you've got like 100 specimens, which is 20 times more than we knew about before that collecting trip. So it does teach you a lot, like going out and trying to find things, like very specific things, teaches you a lot about the ecology and like the habitat preferences, and being able to tell like here, like I don't think that species is going to be here because where I've collected before had X, Y, and Z. It had water, or it had this plant, or it had that plant. And a lot of things are host specific. So if there's not that plant there, you're not going to find that bug there. Same with birding. Bunch of species. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it is. Even, explaining this, when I gave my talk for the Audubon Society, there have been there are like 11,000 bird species worldwide. So all birds worldwide, there are 11,000 species. the group of beetles that I work with, so just one family of beetles, there are about 44,000 species worldwide. So for every bird that we know of about four species of ground beetle. And that diversity is just like people don't understand it. Even other biologists have like a hard time wrapping their heads around that. Where there's been 800 species or so of birds recorded in the US, give or take, without counting like all the crazy vagrants and things that just like happen to be found here once. There are 2,500 species of ground beetle in the US. So even that, there's about 3 times as many ground beetles in the US as there are with birds. How do I keep from getting overwhelmed? I don't. I'm just constantly overwhelmed. um, the process is really different. Uh, Learning bird songs and having like needing to, because you can't catch them and bring them in to the lab anymore, having to learn like rapid ID on a bird or learning to learn the call of a bird was super difficult. Spicy Pretzel, thanks for the follow. Um, yeah, birding has been like a really crazy experience after having the ability to basically flip this specimen over, look at the number of hairs on the underside of the foot, and like position it exactly how I want to get identifications, and then being able to like dissect them and do all this stuff with them under high magnification. This is what I was used to with having to identify things. When I started birding and I had to think about like, oh, I saw the underside of the tail of that warbler and I heard it call for like 2 seconds, and that's all I have to go off of to try to make an identification. It was tough. It's a very different level of difficult, because with birds, and I'm sure you understand this, it's like you have to do it in the field. You can't make it stay still. It won't give you good looks. You're trying to piece together what it looks like behind a a leaf on a tree. That's difficult in its own right. But then with insects, you can collect them, you can bring them back, but then it's difficult because you're trying to identify things that are, a millimeter long. You have to dissect them sometimes, and there's like 15 times as many species. So it's a very different process. And because I've been working on this, I started entomology in 2015. So this is like my 10th year of working with bugs. This is what I am comfortable with, and that's how I don't get overwhelmed. But when I think about the fact that I work at a collection that has 13 million specimens, and there are about 230,000 ground beetles that we have in our collection, even though I see it every day, it's still very hard to like wrap my head around that, and it does still feel very overwhelming most days. Um, it's a whole different process. It's a whole different ball game, and you pick and choose. I'm not a master of everything. I have my group, and I'm very comfortable with North American ground beetles. But the second you start handing me stuff from elsewhere, uh I'm back in the water is about right here. I'm not fully submerged, but I'm having a little bit of trouble. So, yeah, I mean, it's just like birding anywhere else in the world. There's different species that you have to deal and contend with, and you're like, well, that's not, I don't know that one anymore. So you have to rely on resources that were made, sometimes 100 years ago, as this is the only paper that's ever been published on this group in this geographical area before. So, yeah, I do still get overwhelmed sometimes, but you take it in chunks. Wrap up with the Eucanthus. And we are going to go for about another 20 minutes. Going to take my little bit of a break before we go into regular chat chats on Alveus. But let's bring out some things that we have definitely talked about on regular chat chats before. Pretty recently, actually. I think it was maybe only a week or two ago that we talked about best beetles, the passalids or the patent leather beetles. These are the ones that make different squeaking noises to communicate with other members of their family that live in the same log that they do. They do have some form of parental care, so the adults take care of the larvae a little bit. And because they live in wood, you can't see each other in the wood, so they have to communicate using this little suite of squeaky noises that they make.
Let's clean them off a little bit. A little dusty. Not too bad.
Thanks, Tortilla. Burp the camera. I have a camera too, and I like it to document what I've seen, but only after I have identified it in the field. It feels bad. And this has happened a couple times where I've had to have this internal discussion with myself of I caught a bird in a picture and I didn't realize it was a lifer at the time. And I didn't want to count it because I felt like I didn't really see it. And I know that's silly and everyone can manage their stuff their own way. But if it's something that I notice in the field that's different and I can take a picture of it and then try to identify from the photo later, I will count that. But if it's something that I accidentally got in the back of a picture or it was in frame but it wasn't the one I was focusing on, I have trouble counting that. Tortilla, earwigs in your mailbox, will they find them in your neighbor's mailbox? Probably. And yeah. I'll take as many mailbox earwigs as you're willing to send me. Let's get into this guy. Highly reflective, so causing me a little bit of trouble here with the glare. Turn it down just a little bit. I'm in no rush. Send me all of your earwigs. Oh, turned it down too far. I think we're up too much. Too far down, too far up. There we go. Maybe there. Nope, not there. Pause champ. Good enough. We're gonna run with it. So these ones again, scarabioids. So they have these unequally clubbed antennal segments. These are a lot more similar to the stag beetle antennae, where they have those big uh, those big segments that can't close. And something that I forgot to mention with stag beetles. So if we pull this guy out again, and we'll put it next to the best beetle this time. I have no idea if these two are going to be able to be in frame at the same time. We can hope. I'm not thrilled with the light situation. Blasted it. Okay. We're looking a little bit better there. So on this stag beetle on the right, you will notice that there is not a deep groove going. What the? Hello? We're glitching here. Hold on. let's let's get rid of that for a second. Plugged it back in. Will it automatically restart? I kind of doubt it. So let me properties deactivate, activate. There we go. Okay, we're back. I did that completely on accident, so if someone wants to clip that and make a beetle rave emote, that would be fine. On the right hand side here, you have the stag beetle and the middle of the pronotum. So again, the pronotum is this little neck piece that's behind the head. In all insects and beetles, it can be various sizes and things like that. But this is the pronotum of the stag beetle, so right behind the head to right at the tip of the elytra. This is the pronotum, and there's not a deep groove down the middle here. While on the best beetle, on this side, again, this is the pronotum here to here. John, welcome in. You made it. There is this really nice groove down the middle here. So, because of the antenna, they have the same antennal segment numbers. They have the antennal segments that don't close. They have this could be like a female stag beetle where it has these shorter mandibles on it. So one of the other things that you use to separate them, at least in the US, is that best beetles have this really deep, they call it a sulcus here on the middle of the pronotum, and the elytra are a lot more deeply grooved. So give it a second to catch up here. You can see the best beetle on the left has a lot of very distinct, very deep lines and grooves going down the elytra, while the stag beetle on the right is pretty smooth. So that's how you tell the two apart. And again, that's sort of what we are aiming to do on these chat chats specifically, is explain the differences between these beetle families. But this one is fun because it has a horn that goes seemingly the wrong direction. So instead of having a horn that like flips up and allows it to flip over other males or compete, they have a downward facing horn. So this is going to be more along the lines of like how deer and elk fight. So the males will have this horn slightly more exaggerated. So this one is a male, but females will have a little bit of a nub. Um, but instead of like trying to flip each other over, they're basically just going at each other and knocking these horns together. Again, most of this is happening inside of a log. They will live together in subsocial family groups, so you will have adults and larvae, and after the larvae mature, like other adults that are all related to each other living in one log. But at some point, the log is too full, or you've chewed too much of the log out. There's not really enough food in there for everyone else. So they do disperse. They do fly, um, which people don't realize because they're kind of lumbering and they don't look like they would be very graceful flyers. And they're not graceful, but they can do it. Some of the tropical species can't fly. They have fused wings. But in the U.S., there are only two species of best beetle. This one that we're looking at right now is Odontotaenius disjunctus. Same tortilla. Um, this one is Odontotaenius disjunctus, and it's found very widely across the U.S. It goes through Texas, all the way to Florida, up through like Virginia and Maryland. I collected them on like the very eastern border of Kansas one time. So most of the eastern U.S., except for like the far north, has these. But there's a second species, Odontotaenius floridanus, that is only found on the Lake Wales Ridge in central Florida. I have never collected, or I've never even seen Odontotaenius floridanus. Um, if I ever did at any point before, I didn't recognize it as separate because I didn't realize there were two species. But in the spring, when they start becoming a lot more active again, I have plans to specifically go and try to find that species. Um, because it would be cool to have representatives of both here in the US. And this isn't a very big family. I mean, it's a pretty decent sized beetle for the U.S. But in terms of like world diversity, there are. Please hold. I am googling. There are about 500 species known worldwide, which in the grand scheme of beetlehood is not very many. But they're really easy to identify because they all look exactly like this. This body plan, um, I'm gonna pull it up on the move it over here to the face cam section real quick, just because I think it'll be easier to show off. Let's make me big. Cut it. There we go. We're locked in. So this body plan is pretty standard across the entirety of the family. They're all big and shiny and black like this. They have that groove down the middle of the pronotum. The pronotum is a little bit separated from the elytra. And so that's the North American species. And this one, just for comparison's sake, see if we can fix my light balance a little bit. That didn't help at all. Turn it down slightly. There we go. A little bit better now. So, which one of these is from the US and which one of these is from Honduras? it's very difficult to tell. This one here is the one from Honduras still. Left US. Correct. Um, but yeah, like I said, generally, this whole family looks like this. So even though these two are completely different species, I think, yep, they are different genera as well. So it's not even the same genus, and they look like this. This is just what a best beetle looks like, kind of regardless of where you find it. And this one doesn't have the same horn morphology either. So you can see this one, it has some lateral projections over the eyes. Oop, no, you can't because I turned the scope cam off. Give me 1 second. Let's fade that back in. Hell yeah, we're back on beetles now. So this one, something to note, it does have those big front tibia that have teeth on it, so that helps them dig through the tree as it's trying to feed. But it also has these pretty powerful mandibles that it uses to actually like chomp through the tree. But again, like I said, this one doesn't have the same horn sense going on that the one from the US does. But it does have a little bit more right here projecting out over the eye than the ones in the US do. So there's no central horn that comes up, but otherwise, again, like I said, they look so similar. And that's kind of nice when that happens. It's very easy to be like, ah, yes, that one is a best beetle, and I am 100% sure of that because there are only so many things that look like this, and they are mostly all, mostly all actually best beetles. But then you get into a very diverse group like scarabs proper, and you run into a nice mixed morphology. So this will be the last little bit. We're about to take our little bit of a break here before we go to regular chat chats. So this is just going to be a little example, a little example sampler, if you will, of scarab beetles. Oh, thanks, Blip. Oh no. Blue, that one's for you. This is just a little sampler of all of the different subfamilies of scarabs. John. Yeah. Keep the pipes lubed up, you know. So you've got a dung beetle here on the left. You've got a type of Hercules beetle here, this next big black one. You've got a flower chafer. You've got a shining leaf chafer. You've got a little dung beetle. You've got dynastines that don't have horns. J7 for you. Oh god, Tortilla. I'm out. Reload. That one's for you, Kelsey. Um, so yeah, this is an instance where the family is pretty diverse in what they actually look like, unlike the best beetles. These are all scarabs of a different sort. Influencer hand. Maybe this will help. Oh wow, that actually works. Now I know why people do this. Um, but you see a lot of physical difference between these individuals, but these are all scarab beetles, as opposed to the best beetles that all basically look exactly the damn same. So that is where we are going to wrap it up for tonight. Um, Thank you to all the new followers and all the new subs. This is fun for me. I like showing off the beetles. But now we are going to head over into Alveus for chat chats. Go ahead, John. If you, I forgot an S. Minor spelling mistake. If you aren't familiar with chat chats, we use the cameras at Alveus Sanctuary, which is another phenomenal Twitch channel that you should definitely check out if you are not always there. If you aren't aware of it, they have really fancy night cameras that we go around and look at the pasture and things like that, try to find wild bugs and answer your questions about them, or if you've held anything that you haven't answered from this stream yet, we can do that. We're going to start that up in half an hour, so I'm going to take a little bit of a break. And I will see you over there at Alveus. But thank you all for being here and hanging out. Join the Discord if you haven't already. This is mostly an Alveus Discord for the Alveus bug-loving community, but you can set notification roles if you would like notifications about these streams specifically. But otherwise, I shall see you guys in half an hour or so. John, question quick. Okay to identify insects based on patterns, or is that inaccurate? It depends. There are some things with there are some things that can be very highly variable that you would need physical characteristics to look at, because pattern wise they would look almost identical. So, or they would look very different even though they are the same species. Sorry. So it's not the best way to go about it, but it can be helpful in some ways. It is always dependent. The number one rule in entomology is that there are always exceptions. So keep that in mind for any bug questions. All right. Well, again, thank you all for being here. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and I will see you over at Alveus in just about half an hour. God, I forget how to raid every night. ALVEUSSANCTUARY. There we go. Okay. I'm sending y'all over to Alveus. Hang out on the cams for a little bit, and like I said, I will be back in about half an hour to do chat chats. Bye, y'all. Have a nice night.